Here.
Tina Champ. Jonathan Fleeter.
Here.
Good evening. First and foremost, thank you for attending this important meeting. In the hopes of maintaining a professional meeting, I would respectfully ask that all questions and comments be held until all the presentations have been fully presented. Tonight, we're going to start with an update on our stop-loss insurance. Our benefits consultant, BSI, will be presenting information on our stop-loss insurance renewal.
You're good? You guys hear me?
Yep.
Is that good?
Yeah, you can have to move out to my background.
All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sean Hughes with BSI Corporate Benefits. We're your healthcare consultants. So one of our jobs is to work on your stop-loss renewal that's coming up here for July 1st. With me in the room is Kelly Sheptock. She's our account director assigned to your account. She handles a lot of the day-to-day stuff that we'll do from a legal standpoint. Also, Tony DeRay, agency principal, back there as well. Agency principal, that means he's the guy at the top that we all report up to. So, all right, I'll try and get through this as fast as I possibly can. Obviously, feel free to ask me questions at the end. I'll be more than willing to walk through the process we went through, what some of the numbers look like, and why the recommendation is ultimately there. From an agenda standpoint, we'll talk about the current stop-loss coverage, what the coverage is, why stop-loss is important to the district. We'll do a high claim review. We're not going to obviously get into anyone's personal health information. You're not going to see names and diagnosis. You'll see truly what the dollar amount was for the claim, how many there were, those kinds of things. Those things go hand in hand when actually going out there and negotiating stop-loss renewal. The Vista is who's handling the stop-loss today. We'll show you what their proposal looked like from a renewal standpoint, and then we'll go into the full market review. So we took it out to the whole entire market. There's many stop-loss carriers that are out there. We'll show you what that market review looked like. Then we also developed a program from PSHIC. That stands for Public Schools Health Insurance Cooperative. That's the opportunity of actually bringing school districts together. It's one of the things with school districts being public entities, you can share some risk. We believe there's some value in doing that, so we'll show you what that proposal looks like. A couple of years ago, Lehigh was in the PSHIC model and then left. So we'll show you how they ran inside the PSHIC model versus what happened when they left the PSHIC model, which will kind of support the ultimate recommendation. So then we'll end with the recommendation and next steps and those kinds of things. Okay, so current stop-loss contract, just to kind of level set what the contract is. Again, it's with Vista, with Champion Life Insurance sitting behind the scene. The specific stop-loss deductible is $70,000. What that means is the district is responsible for each member's claims up until $70,000. The district is self-funded, which means you're taking on the risk. You're partnering with Highmark to actually administer the plan, but every claim up to $70,000 for each individual gets paid by the district. And then the district is buying stop-loss coverage over the top. So once a claim hits $70,000 in one, that $1 starts being paid by the stop-loss carrier. Okay, and that goes on, and if it's a $2 million claim, that stop-loss carrier is responsible for the $2 million minus the $70,000. The contract type is a paid contract. That's really important to make sure we cover run out from one period to another. Your current contract has no lasers. What lasers means that sometimes stop-loss carriers will take one individual and they'll move the specific deductible up for that one individual based on risk and those kinds of things. Rate caps and no lasers is in the renewal, so we'll show you what that looks like. It's very important to have both of those components together. Because if you don't have a laser, if you have a laser provision, then they can just laser somebody, keep the increase low, or they can do something vice versa. You guys also have what's called aggregate stop loss. That's protection across all the employees here at Lehigh. That quarter is 125%. So what they figure out is what the expected rate, what the expected risk is, and they add a corridor, so they add 25% more risk on top of that expected liability. All right, so we'll talk about that because that's very important, because that ultimately caps the risk for the district at a certain level. In the proposals today, in your current contract, there's 11.5% on the consultant that was managing this before. That's built in there. With our proposal, that compensation is taking out because we have a direct contracting relationship with the district. Okay, high claimant review. This is a little bit of a scary slide because of the number of large claims that we're dealing with. Again, everything's been de-identified. There's no personal information, names, or diagnosis here. Obviously, we want to protect people's personal health information and the claims that they're going through. So again, keep in mind, your specific stop loss deductible is $70,000. That's what you're responsible for. And then the stop loss carrier is picking up the amount over the top. You have 12 breaches year to date. That means you had 12 individuals that had more than $70,000 for the year. So that's 12 stop loss reimbursements that the stop loss carrier has had. The benchmarking says a group your size, that number should be 4 to 5, and we predict that there's going to be 8 going forward. So right there, what that's really telling you, we're dealing with a challenge. There's a lot of high-cost individuals that are in your plan. All 12 of those individuals are still active working here at the district, and most of their conditions are ongoing conditions, which means that risk is going to continue going forward. So the year-to-date loss ratio is claims divided by a premium, is at 112%. What that means for every dollar in premium that the stop loss carrier collected, they paid out $1.12 in actual claims. They want that number to really be 80 cents on a dollar, and here it's at 112. Where we projected to finish the year, because we still haven't seen what the claims look like for June, is about 125% is where that needs to be. Also right now, there's actually 36 claims, it includes the 12 above, but there's other 24 individuals that had claims over $25,000 year to date. So again, projecting it out, because now we're working on the contract from July of this year to July of next year. Right now, based on the claims data, unless they leave the district, we're looking at 8 other breaches going forward based on the $70,000 spec. A little bit better than this year, but again, we're definitely going to have some stop loss breaches going forward. Okay, so here's kind of the full market bid, what we did. So we sent it out to 20 stop loss carriers. What we look at from a credible stop loss carrier is to make sure that they're a credible carrier and they pay claims. So there's ratings on stop loss carriers. They have to be at least an A+ rating or greater for us to send the RFP to it. If they're below that, we will not send it to it because we don't want to ever be in a situation where they start fighting claims, denying claims, or actually, struggle from a funding standpoint. Out of the 17 that we sent it to, out of the 20 that we sent it to, 17 actually declined to release a proposal. They found that the risk was either too high or the rate that was there from a renewal standpoint, they could not beat it. So 17 of them basically said no thank you because of the risk that was there. Highmark Blue Shield has their own stop loss. They also declined it as well. The reason I put that up there to at least call them out, they have more of the insight of what's going on in those 12 individuals. Kind of tells me when they don't like the risk, we definitely have some issues that we got to work through to make sure we get the district protected going forward. So we really only ended up with 3. We ended up with 3 competitive proposals. We have the Vista renewal, we have a competitive proposal from Sunlight, as well as the PSHIC proposal, which is actually combining school district experience together. Okay, so this is the Vista renewal. It might be better if I come up here so I can point at some of the numbers and what they mean here. All right, so a couple components. Kind of looked at this. These are the fixed costs. These are the fixed costs that the district is paying. The specific rate, that's for the protection for the $70,000 stop loss protection. It's broken down on a single rate and a family rate. You multiply that out by the enrollment. The current annual premium is $960,000. Moving over to the right, that's the renewal rate. So the renewal rate, I believe, is a 28% increase. Goes to 147 from 116. 416 from 323. Premium jumps up to 1.6 million. You're looking at roughly, that's almost a $200,000 increase from a stop loss premium standpoint. Your ASO fee, I highlight that. ASO fee stands for Administrative Services Only. That's what we're paying the Highmark and others to actually process the claims. With this change, there's also an increase in the ASO fee. We'll talk about the PSHIC proposal actually brings that ASO fee down. So your annual ASO fee, $191 going to $201. Again, not a big increase there, but still an increase. Your aggregate premium, this is the protection on everyone. That's a smaller premium that you pay because it's very rare that there's a breach from an aggregate standpoint. That's going from $18.61 per contract up to $26.30 per contract. An annual premium, $58,000, jumping to $83,000. Adding all these up, the annual cost today is a little over $1.5 million. It's jumping up to $1.449 million If we make the decision to stay with Vista, in total, that's a 25.2% increase. Again, the bulk of the increase is coming from here. That has to do with those large claims. Again, they're responsible for every dollar over 70,000. You can see the number of claimants that they have with the loss ratio. That's what's generating the increase. Okay, the next competitive proposal is Sun Life. All right, Sun Life is the only one called the standalone stop loss proposal. It's the only one that put a proposal together versus the other ones that declined. Stop loss rate's a little bit lower, so there's about $100,000 there from the specific stop loss. Instead of 1.164 million, it drops to 1.02. The ASO fee is a little bit higher because this does require partnering with a company called Renal Logic. They have a program that will help control some of the large claims that are in there. Because of HIPAA reasons, I will not go into those details. So the annual ASO fee is a little bit higher in this program. You're getting a big win though on the aggregate stop loss premium. The Vista renewal was $26.30. The Sun Life proposal was $5.44. So you're getting roughly versus the renewal, that's roughly a $66,000 savings from an aggregate standpoint. So a little higher on the ASO fee, over $100,000 of savings here, and another $60-some thousand there. Drops the rate increase instead of 25.2. Sun Life is at 7.8. Okay? Questions so far? I'll stop there. I know that's a lot. Or do you want me to keep going through the whole thing? Whatever works for you guys.
When you're talking about claims, that's single claim?
That's a single member for
$70,000 claims per individual per year.
per year. Yeah, that's those claims that I showed you start at 7/1/18, and how much that one member has incurred up until now. We don't have June claims
But if
yet.
you have two multiple incidents, that's different claims against the carrier, correct?
If let's say it's me, let's say I have a heart attack and I break an arm,
Yeah.
all that goes into one
Oh,
bundle.
it does? Okay.
Yes, yes.
All right.
But if my wife has a heart attack and breaks, that's a separate member.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
The previous year, how many claimants did we have that broke the 70,000?
In the year prior to this one, so 7/1/17 to 7/1/18, I believe it was 6.
Okay, so closer to the.
Closer, a lot closer to the norm. Yeah. Now, the bad thing is, again, I can't go into those people's personal, but they have conditions that point to them continuing going forward.
Mhm.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. The other component of this renewal is looking at the aggregate, the maximum liability. I showed you what the premium was for the aggregate stop loss, but they also cap the district. Every single employee ultimately gets capped. Where that maximum liability, this is all the claims under $70,000 is what they're looking at here. The current maximum liability has 125% quarter. So there's an expected number, and then they're adding 25% on top of that. 4.9 million. So this is kind of the worst case scenario from the district if everyone had a really bad year. The Vista renewal jumps up almost $1 million, a 20% increase. The Sun Life renewal pretty much cuts that in half, 5.4 million. So if you combine the aggregate with the fixed cost, this is kind of, if you think about the district's worst case scenario. The worst case scenario, the medical and pharmacy, a little over 6 million today. On the Vista renewal, 7.4 million. With the Sun Life renewal, 6.7 million, 21.6 versus the 10.7. So if we stopped right there and we didn't have another proposal to talk about, we would recommend moving from Vista to Sun Life. Okay? All right, now I want to talk about the PSHIC proposal and some of the advantages for PSHIC, because this will ultimately be the BSI recommendation here. All right, so the PSHIC model, again, is Public School Health Insurance Cooperative. This is the opportunity to band together with some other school districts. Here are the school districts that are in the program. I think the closest one to you is Jim Thorpe. They're also willing to be a reference. They're not a BSI client, but they're willing to be a reference to talk about how the model has helped them. And I'll even show how the model has helped the district in prior lives. One of the huge advantages of this program, once you're in the program, there is a laser to get in this program, but once you're in the program, no one can ever be lasered again, as well as your rate caps get set at 20 to 25% every year. So again, think about it. We're dealing with a 28% increase. It actually should have been a 40. Some of that, your Vista went from 40 to 28 because the commissions got backed out of there. So you would have actually received the full rate cap is what you're actually getting with the Vista renewal. So again, caps it at 20 to 25% if for some reason the claims get a little bit worse. With the ASO fee, Highmark looks at all the school districts together instead of individually. your ASO fee, just the high mark, drops to $47.50 versus the $63.86. Also, your stop loss deductible, what the district is responsible, drops from $70,000 down to $65,000, so you get a $5,000 good guy on each one of those claims underneath the stop loss deductible. The aggregate premium was lower than Vista. It's a little bit higher than Sun Life, but it's a lot lower than the Vista. Here's one major advantage here, the cap on the entire district. Right now, you're set at 125%. The first year in the model, it's set at 120. The second year, and then going forward, it drops down to 115%. So again, I'll show you what some of those advantages are. But again, a lot of the protections from risk there, having the rate caps and having some of the shared programs really has some advantages to the district. So overall from the model, you still rate it individually, how they set some of your aggregate and even some of your spec. Those are things that are rated on your claims experience, your census, your demographics. Plan design comes into it a little bit. Your plan design is a very rich plan design, $0 deductibles and those kind of things. All those factor into how some of these rates are set. But again, the stop loss, you have protection on both an individual and aggregate standpoint, and then there's a cross share. So there's the opportunity, if the district here doesn't perform well, that you actually, some of the other districts pledge money together into a pool that gets shared across the other districts. If one of the ways it does, it really helps spread things out. When one district has a bad year, the other one helps out and those kind of things, but it's still a very small percentage of what's ultimately being shared. It's not like you're sharing 80% of the risk, you're more sharing like 5% of the overall risk. Okay? You have two funding options in this model. Right now you're paying at what's called pay-as-you-go. As every claim comes in, that's how you pay it. That has some ups and downs from an accounting standpoint. You have a really bad month, it spikes up. You have a good month, it spikes down. Both of these programs, if you fund it 90% or you fund at the worst case scenario, it's level throughout the year. Okay, so again, another advantage there. You also get a seat on the governing board. So when they make decisions across entire PSHIC, someone from the Heighton can sit on the governing board, and you have the same vote as everyone else in the program. It does require a 3-year commitment. So if you do go into the program, you are in the program for at least 3 years. And again, Lauren from Jim Thorpe will gladly be a reference if anybody wants to reach out. Okay, let's talk about the numbers, all right? So this is kind of the summary slide that I showed you. Vista current, Vista renewal 21.6, the Sun Life renewal netted out at 10.7. Far right is the PSHIC renewal. Now they break their specific stop loss down into 2 buckets. The first one is your straight specific stop loss deductible. $80 and $192, $1 million versus $544. So significant reduction there, but there is a cross blending in for the next $200,000 after one individual goes in over $70,000. All that money goes into one pool, and as that money is paid, whatever is left over gets returned back to the districts. All right, so kind of think about it. You're almost playing a worst case scenario from a stop loss standpoint. And collectively, when they run well, money gets returned. You can never have to pay more, but you can have money returned to you in this bucket. They average 4 out of the 5 years, there's money returned to the district. Now it gets spread out based on size. If you're bigger or smaller than the district, that's how it gets spread out. The ASO fee, again, is lower, but there is a fee to be part of the consortium, so that is built in there. It kind of brings the ASO, kind of normalizes it where it is. So the annual ASO fee, you can see very close to the Sun Life and the Vista, not a big difference there. The added premium, $8 versus our Vista renewal, a little bit higher than the Sun Life. Here's one of the big differences. Because you're capped at 120, your worst case scenario from a claim fund standpoint, $5.1 million versus 5.5 or almost $6 million. So what does that mean in total? $6 million. Worst case scenario for the district goes to 6.6 million. So capital worst case scenario at 8.4% versus Vista at 21 versus Sun Life at 10.7. So again, and the nice thing is we have that protection now going forward. We have the cap renewal, we have no lasers going forward. All those things are in that contract going forward. There is a laser on one individual on both the Sun Life and the PSHIC proposal in the door. There's one individual, again, I can't go into their claims. But we are also confident that that person is not going to breach the deductible because of them coming off a plan for a certain reason. Okay? So, any questions on the numbers before I kind of get into some of how PSHIC has run over the time and then how the Heighton also did in the PSHIC model?
Can you just what this $690,000 is the spec share?
Yeah, the spec share is, what it is, it's a great way to get this number way down, right? So you can see that number is significantly less, because it's a $65,000 spec versus 70, apples to apples, that number should be higher, right? But what sits over the top is, let's say I have a $300,000 claim. Might be the best way to give you an example of how it works. Let's say I have a $300,000 claim. Something happens to me, I work at the district, $300,000. You're paying a premium then for that you're actually putting another stop loss deductible on top of that $65,000. That's another $200,000. And you pay that once and that's it. So let's say I have that $300,000. Lehighton's responsible for the first 65, and then the pool collects another $200,000 from that pool that you've already paid for to pay that next $200,000. Okay, so think about there's another aggregating level over there before the stop loss carrier starts to pay. Right? And you're paying a premium for that. That's the $690,000.
Okay, so we're paying $690,000 every year?
Every year. Correct. That goes into the pool.
It's like a flat fee?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. But that is also, kind of also think about it here. Let's look at this number, the 1.1. So you're a little bit higher if you combine these two together. It's like 1.2 versus a little over. So call it an extra $200,000. But what happens here, let's just say all those 12 individuals, they don't have claims that go over 70,000. You're still going to pay the 1.1 million, regardless, right? It's a fixed cost, whether or not you run it at 0% loss ratio or 200, you still pay the $1 million. In this model, what's fixed here is the 544,000. But if that same thing happens, I know this is extreme, and all those claims go away, you would have a great likelihood of getting that money back. Not all of it, because that's what's also shared across the other district, but you would have a chance of getting that money back.
Right, that goes into the pool and it's more...
Correct. That's part of the cross-share part.
Sure, okay.
Okay? Great question. Okay, here's some of the history of the stats of how PSHIC is performing. They have the stats all the way back to 2010, all the way what the renewals are for this year for 1920. So they break it down by the ASO fee. Now this is really normal. The actual ASO fee that Highmark is charging, you can see that doesn't fluctuate that much. The district has been going up and up over the years, but as this model gets bigger and bigger, as more districts join, hopefully that ASO fee with Highmark will actually go down. Look at the stop loss number. These are the average stop loss numbers. There was only 2 years where they had over a 10% stop loss renewal. Because again, almost thinking about like Home Depot, why they're able to sell batteries cheaper than the corner hardware store. We're buying stop loss power with the size of the entire model instead of just the size of Lehighton. And you can see the challenges we have this year because of the actual number of large claims. So again, because of that buying power, 3,000 or 3,400 lives are what they're up to right now, they can spread that risk out more, which gives them the ability to put lower rates out there. The attachment point, you saw how much your attachment point went up. It went up about 20%. You can see on average those attachment points are not moving that much. This is kind of, we put this in green to kind of show you the average increase in these models over the past 10 years has never been, the average increase across all those districts has not been over 10%. Most of the time, they're very low single digits. Here's a lot of times what the worst case scenario is from a district standpoint. Your as-is renewal was above every single one of those worst case scenarios for that whole entire 10 years. All right. Now, what we hope is this model continues to grow. Because I look at it, the bigger the model gets, the more power it has, the more they can spread out some risk to help out all the districts. Here's the actual Lehighton results when they were in the model. They were in the model from 2013 and left in July of 2017. Look at your specific stop loss history. Right? You're already dealing with a 28. It should have been a 40% increase without the commission change. 3.4, 1, minus 1.9, and 4.3. Your aggregate stop loss. Again, that's not a big number. Minus 12, and it stayed flat the whole entire time. Your ASO fee actually went down because as the model got bigger, the ASO fee got smaller. And look at your maximum liability, basically over that time stayed relatively flat. On top of it, because the district at the time paid the maximum liability, which would also be our recommendation, $6.4 million came back to the district in the form of a surplus. Because they paid a level funded, they paid the worst case scenario, which would be our recommendation, and any dollar that's not used comes back 100% to the district. And again, you don't have to use it for healthcare, you can use it for school books and other things, if that actually happens. Okay. Here's just kind of a visual graphically. These circles show when you were in the model, 13 to 17, and what happened since we've left the model. And a lot of that has to do with not having the ability to spread that risk and getting that cost share. You're looking at, you've gone up $800,000 in the last 2 years since Lehigh left the model. All right, so you average inside the model at 1.7. Since you've left the model, you're average close to a double-digit rate increase every single year. So from a recommendation, last slide for you, our recommendation is move into the PSHIC model effective 7/1. It's still with Highmark, plan designs are the same. The employees, they don't even know this is happening to them. You know, their ID cards, all that stuff looks exactly the same. This is really the stop loss protection over the top for the district. Some of the justification, you have the lowest maximum liability by almost $400,000. You have the caps going forward on both the spec and the ag. You have no lasers going forward, no exclusions. And then your aggregate set at 120, then it goes to 115 going forward. You have a lower ASO fee, and you have a little bit of flexibility on how you actually fund into the model. Again, that's a decision. If you move this route, we can make that decision then. The only important thing is we do need to make sure, because it's coming up on July, that signed paperwork is submitted, whether or not it's Sun Life or PSHIC that you, or Vista, those are really your only three options, that paperwork is submitted by June 30th. You've got to have stop loss protection come June 1st, because if you don't, and you have $1 million claim that pops that day, that could 100% land on the district. So, thank you. Questions? I know that was a lot of numbers. Questions?
So our laser is $240,000 if we go to Asia.
And it's also $240,000 with Sun Life, but we have intel that person is still going to be on the district, but the district will no longer be primary. Yeah, gotta be careful what I say here.
Yeah, there would be other coverage that would pay first. We would pay at a much less level.
At a much less rate. So sometimes lasers are good.
That eliminates the laser, or you're just adding additional information?
The laser's not there, but the laser would still be there.
Okay.
But the claims that are, I'm gonna be really careful from
The
a business
potential
standpoint.
to that laser would drop.
Yeah,
Okay,
It
yeah,
it
but we
appears
still
the
have,
potential to
to
impact.
pay the laser.
if it happens.
If it happens.
If it happens.
Oh, okay, so it's
But
not
which-
like if we
Yeah.
sign up the first day, we have to pay that, that's
No.
not.
No, you don't pay that, you only pay that if it
Okay.
happens. Yeah, let's say it's me. I'll use a real condition that usually generates a laser. Let's say I have colon cancer, right? That's one that sometimes I'm gonna have a lot more claims than $70,000. They might say, for Sean, we're gonna set him at $240,000.
Mhm.
Now, if I only run at 65, you only pay 65. But if I run at 150, you pay 150 instead of paying 7.
Mhm.
If I run at 240, you pay 240 instead of 7.
So you're saying that these lasers are activated by a claim or a circumstance, so we potentially could have lasers that we can't even imagine.
No, lasers are set on the front end. Yeah, with this model and with Sun Life, they're setting a laser to get into the program just on that one individual, and then they can never do it again on anybody,
Okay.
which is really, really powerful,
Great.
right? Let's just
Okay.
say someone that's a hemophilia, right? That's an automatic $1 million claim, and it basically never goes away.
Mhm.
That person would be lasered pretty much forever. And they may laser that person every year to $1 million. Instead of 70,000, now you're responsible for the first $1 million.
Mhm.
That's something that could possibly bankrupt the district.
Sure.
So that's why we do have to deal with the laser, and we're okay with the laser because we have intel that says that person's probably going to run well below it because the
Sure.
risk is getting shifted from the district
So this potential laser will never be more than 240,000?
just on that one individual.
Okay,
Yes.
once we're in, then that just.
There's no future lasers on any current or future member.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, think about those other 12. If they continue to run that way,
Mhm.
you're still capped at, well, the PG, you're capped at 65,000, not 75.
Sure, sure.
Other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can I ask another couple questions?
Sure.
So in the presentation, I think that our presenter said that there was a 3-year commitment if we went with your recommendations.
Yes.
And these, you had like an enrollment fee, which was like 500,000, and then there was the 690, the spec share. Would that be the same for those 3 years, or might those premiums change?
Yeah, those premiums premiums would change, so every year there's going to be a renewal similar to this. Now, some of the fees that would stay relatively the same would be your ASO fee, the fee to be part of the consortium, that's built into the ASO fee. The aggregate premium also doesn't change. Now, those aren't big ticket items, but the stop loss premium could change depending on the risk, and also the maximum liability. Those are the same two buckets that are changing today with your Vista renewal. All right. Now, it's also our job to work for your behalf to negotiate that rate, because the rate has to be justified.
So how much do you think it's possible that 544 and 690 might change?
The most it can change is 20 to 25% is where they set the rate cap at each year.
Okay.
Your Vista renewal, if you look at your Vista renewal, it changed by 28%. It actually changed by 40 because there's a 12% broker compensation that's taken out of it. So if you kind of look at it that way, because you have a 40% cap in there right now,
Sure.
if Vista could have, they would have given you a larger rate increase, but because of the cap, they couldn't. Put it to that way.
Okay.
But that's where that worst case scenario is that cap. Now that's where that number, let's just say we stay with Vista and there was $1 million claimant, they could turn around and hit you with a massive rate increase or laser that individual going forward.
Sure.
That's where it has that protection of the model is in there.
But those two numbers, so if we sign up with, what are you calling it, PISA?
PISA.
If we sign up with them, that 544 and that 690, they could increase by 20 to 25%
Max.
max each year, and once we go in with them, we're in for 3 years.
That's correct.
And we have to pay what they say.
Yeah, I mean, it's ultimately negotiable. I mean, it's our job, like, let's use an extreme
I'm
example.
not trying to be a jerk, I just
I
want to
understand.
what we're getting into here, so that we don't say, oh, it sounds fabulous, we sign up, and the next year we're sitting here with Patty, and she says, it's not 544 and 690, it's blah, 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 and then I would be amazed.
Yeah, and that's one of our roles, because we'll go the other extreme. Let's say you run it at 0% loss ratio, that number shouldn't move, right? That should not go up, because it's a subject of how the district actually performs. So it's the number of large claims, the number of breaches, and those kinds of things.
And
So-
the numbers are also affected by the other members, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Not to that extreme, right? Like if all the other districts perform absolutely awful and you perform great, your number's not going to move pretty much at all.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So there's sort of, there's a scale that kind of respects each district and what their effect is on the overall.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the best way I can say it
But
is,
if we have a very bad year, then those numbers.
yeah, if you have a really bad year, you'll be thanking me with a hug more than just because the protections in this model when you do have a really bad year. I mean, put it this way, I would have loved if you guys stayed in PISHIC for the 2 years. You would have not been dealing with those increases because you had I mean, some of it's the claim, so you would have still gone up. It wouldn't be like you would have stayed flat, but you wouldn't have went up as much as you would have went up.
Right.
Right, so the bad years, this is where this model is most powerful. When you have the good years, it's pretty much the same.
Mhm. Mhm.
So along those lines, I have a question too. If we are subject to up to 25%, that would also include anyone else that might want to bid on it because it's based on our track record as to how many claims we have and how high they are and everything. So if ours goes up in these 3-year periods, if we just had a 1-year contract and we went out, we'd still be facing increases
Oh, absolutely.
because other people would see what we did before. So I know the 3 years, and I understand what Joy's saying, but the 3 years are going to go up if we have a problem no matter who bids on this,
Yeah,
correct?
and that's almost like, let's say you were in the PISHIC model right now, because we'll still look at the market every year to see what it looks like. Let's say we're in the PISHIC the model, and say we're at the end of the 3 years and we went out to market, they're going to look at your 12 individuals and the other claims that are underneath, and what they're going to do is they're going to decline, just like the other 17 carriers did this past year, because they can't put a rate that matches that risk.
That one, okay. So I guess my question in the end is the risk is the same whether we go with PSIC for 3 years or anything else. If we're going to go up, we're going to go up.
Yeah, again, I kind of look the best way I can do it. If you run great, if these claimants go away or they level out, you won't, the PISHIC model versus the others, you won't really see the difference.
Okay.
If you run bad, the protection that
That's what it
PISHIC
is.
provides you, it cannot be matched versus, because again, all those, the Vista and the Sunlight, they're looking at the heighten on your own of what you're doing. Here they can look at the 3,400 contracts that are in the model, and that's what I'll spread it out a little bit.
Thank you.
Okay? Thank you.
So my recommendation would be that we re-enter the P-SHIP model. I believe it provides the projections that they just shared. The model historically performs very well. There's no change for our employees. We still have full flexibility in plan design as we negotiate. Not only from the protections, but from an employee basis, there's a lot more services available that are built into the model. Different things with like a cancer diagnosis, they have advocates that can work with our individual employees. So it's going to help us protect us from risk, give us a more level increase if we are performing badly. But it also does have some positive benefits as well that it can provide to our employees.
I mean, that's it. Unfortunately, you know, Greg was the lead at that time, but, you know, it didn't work in our favor. And have to give Patty, you know, credit too, with being able to talk to P-SHIP in the model, and sure, because they didn't have to give us the opportunity to come in there too. They could have been one of the people not bidding on it, but I think, you know,
Seems like our best option. Definitely.
short term and long term.
And it's going to drop the half point to 115%. So if we continue to perform as we have, our maximum liability, even if we were expected to continue just as bad, drops. And that's another thing that the model gives us. So we would look to place this on next week's agenda for approval. We'll move into the budget discussion. And I just want to start by saying I cannot offer any insight into a prior individual's budgetary methodology. What I can provide you is my methodology. My budget includes salaries budgeted at the cost for the currently in place collective bargaining agreements, as well as mandated employer costs such as FICA and PSERS. The PSERS employer contribution cost is 34.29%, and the FICA cost remains at 7.65%. The healthcare benefit costs are budgeted based upon our claims experience and an actuarial analysis of our claims, and includes items such as stop loss as well. Other expenditures such as special education, charter school tuition, supplies, textbooks, and other items have been budgeted based on an analysis of both current year-to-date expenditures and the most recent three-year average expenditures. The revenues have been budgeted based upon the 2019 subsidy rates as released by the Pennsylvania Department of Education, federal grant allocations, and local revenue. Local real estate tax revenues are currently budgeted at 47.88 mils, which is a zero increase. Other local revenues such as earned income tax and delinquent tax collections are budgeted based on current year collections and the most recent three-year average collections. We have a presentation. Because of the technical difficulties last time, we felt we would just print it. I wanted to start with fund balance. What is fund balance versus what is it not? The GASB, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board definition, is that the fund balance is what is left over after assets have been used to meet its liabilities. Fund balance is not a separate bank account. When we talk, we have $4 million, you have $14 million in fund balance. Doesn't mean you have a separate bank account set aside with that money in it. In very simple terms, your fund balance is what cash you would have left if you liquidated every asset and paid off all your liabilities. So you took all your bank accounts, took everything you could sell for cash, paid off all your liabilities, that's what you would be left with. As far as the district's general fund, the fund balance history. At June 30, 2018, the fund balance was $4.2 million, of which $2.6 million was spendable, and I'll talk about spendable in a minute. At June 30, 2017, fund balance was $6.5 million, of which 4.8 million was spendable. The difference between the total fund balance and what is spendable are assets such as prepaid expenses, interfund receivables that are not expected to be collected, those assets that are listed as assets but not available or likely to be available to be converted to cash. And you can, on the audit report, you'll see the non-spendable fund balance listed along with the assigned and unassigned fund balance to get to that total fund balance number. So I know there's some confusion. Fund balance is a concept that can be clear as mud. So I wanted to try and just put some clarity to what it is versus what it isn't. On the next page, you'll see analysis of the general fund expenditures. So for each of the fiscal years, 2018-19, current year to date, and then back to 2015-16. The first column is the budgeted expenditures. The next column were the final expenditures. For 18-19, it's expenditures through today. And then I want to talk about the expenditures that would have been reported to the board at a June board meeting of each of these respective years, which would have been expenditures through May that you would have seen before you passed your budget for the next year. So we'll start at the bottom. 2015-16 budgeted was 38.6. The actual expenditures was just over 44 million. In June, you saw numbers through May which said that you had spent just over 39 million. In 2016-17, budgeted expenditures were 39.3. Final expenditures were almost 41.5. In June, you saw statements that said your expenditures through May were 37.1. So you would have expected to see an additional 30 days of expenditure from that May point. 2017-18, the budgeted expenditures were just under 41 million. Final expenditures were 42.9. At that June board meeting of 2018, you saw expenditures of 37.5. 2018-19 budgeted expenditures are 40.6. I anticipate our final expenditures are going to be 43.3. As of today, our final expenditures year to date are 42.67 million. I expect to have additional invoices for special ed, and we have some open purchase orders that have been issued we're awaiting invoices on. I'm estimating additional expenditures of 647,000 for total expected expenditures of 43.321 million. There can always be a discrepancy between May and June. You're going to have some adjustments for summer pays to teachers that you accrue back to this fiscal year. PSER's costs for those payrolls accrue back to this year. But there's a pretty significant jump from what you guys saw in June versus how June really ended. And I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention.
It was 4 to 5 million.
Yeah.
And
it was
we're not expecting that to happen.
No, as of today, according to our accounting system, and we've got a lot of things that we've pushed to get in to make sure that we have the most up-to-date number.
You think 43 is a real number?
I think
It's not
43.3,
going to jump by 5 million.
no,
Okay.
no. So that kind of gives you an idea of where we were budgeting versus where we ended each of those years. I did the same thing for revenues. Revenues we've been a little closer on. In 2015-16, we budgeted revenue of 37.6, and we collected 37.1. 2016-17, we budgeted 38.3, and we collected 38.1. 2017-18, we budgeted 39.1, and we collected 39.7. 2018-19, we budgeted 40.5, we collected 40.3, but in that 40.3 is about 702,000 for the sale of buildings that was not budgeted for. So if we're looking at what as far as actual budgeted revenues did we collect? We collected about 39.6. So of the 40.4, we collected 39.6. We will have some additional revenues coming in this last part of the month, but it will not be significant numbers because we have received our final subsidy payments. And again, on these, you can see that local, state, and federal dollars, the local community is still supporting public education. So the state, while they have increased funding for basic ed. We get increased subsidy for our PSERS cost, for our FICA cost, but we only get that increase because our expense went up. So again, in my opinion, the state is still not adequately funding public education, and again, it's continuing to fall on the local districts to figure out how to fund it. So our current budget as of today, these numbers have been updated for increases we've received this week on workers' compensation. It's been updated for the results of the stop-loss RFP and some additional unfortunate increases that have come in. So from a revenue basis, we're anticipating $40.6 million, $40,598,000. For budgeted expenditures, we're anticipating $45,076,000. And you'll see it broken down between salaries, benefits, and all the other supplies and things like that.
Why is this different than the 43 million on?
It was 40, that's our finished expected for 18-19. This is our budget for 19-20.
Oh, okay,
When we look at the budget shortfall, it's 4.477. I think we can make likely adjustments in our 600 series object, which is supplies, books, some of its utilities as well. I think if we are aggressive and conservative, we will be able to shave $500,000 off. We have heard that we may have a resignation coming, and through staffing realignment, there's an additional $125,000 in savings. Through an aggressive discussion with teachers about the benefits of obtaining a heightened area school district diploma versus a charter school diploma, if we can pull back 3 to 4 individuals, 2 special ed, a couple regular education students, we can save $70,000. Other factors that, in 1920, if they start going the right way, our expense can drastically drop. If our benefit claims start to drop or one of these high-cost claimants would fall off our plan, that's an immediate positive to our budget. And in the PSHIP model, even though we might be paying in, and I would recommend we pay in at 90%, not at 100% that first year, it all comes back to us if we perform really well. If we obtain additional retirements or resignations, we feel that there's some staffing realignment that can happen, which will be additional savings. And obviously we have Michelle, David, and Franklin that are looking to sell, which would be additional revenue.
Can I ask a question before we move on? Maybe if I go back a page to the 2019-2020 budget, which is 45 million instead of our budgeted expenditure the previous year was at 40.7 million. For the 2018 year, right?
Yeah, so we budgeted, but we're expected to finish the year at 43.3.
Correct. So where in these numbers are the major differences popping in?
You would have differences in salaries. You would have differences within benefits to make up for the increased claim costs, increased stop-loss insurance, increased PSERS rate. There's an increase in the 300 series. Most of that relates to special education costs. We've been under budgeting that expenditure. So we're not anticipating a dramatic increase in special education costs. What we are doing is catching up our budgeted number to what we've actually been spending. The 500 series, you're going to see increases for charter school tuition. Even if no additional students enroll in charter schools, our tuition rate increases, so we'll get an increase in that cost to the charter school. You'll actually see in supplies, it's an increase from the 18-19 budget. However, it's a decrease from what we've been spending. The 800 series is mostly interest on the debt of the district. There are some small dues and fees in there. And then the 900 series is principal payments and then fund transfers. That would be if the food service fund needs operating cash, which historically they have needed, that would be in that number as well, which is budgeted at $110,000, which has been the standard.
Can you email to us later the same basic chart, but for the previous year, just so that we can compare apples to apples?
I can give you,
Well, I was thinking budget, just to see.
I think it's,
This is just to see where we under budgeted.
Correct.
That's what that was showing.
Basically, yeah, because this next year budget basically is correcting for what we actually spent, so.
correct.
Right, so if we had our budget from last year, we'd be able to see where the adjustments all happened.
Yes.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about real estate tax revenue. Our current millage rate is 47.88. The district has had no real estate tax increase since 2014-15. Based upon the current millage rate of 47.88, the homestead farmstead relief for 2019-20 is estimated at $266.31. What that means is each eligible property owner will see a deduction of $266.31 on their real estate tax bill. There's approximately 4,500 properties within the school district that will receive this deduction. According to the Act 1 adjusted index of 3.2%, the district could raise taxes for 1920 a maximum of 1.53 mils. A 1 mil increase would be an annual increase to a taxpayer of approximately $39.63. That's based on the average assessed value for the district. The 1 mil increase would generate approximately $379,000 in additional revenue to the district. A 1.5 mil increase would be an annual increase to a taxpayer of $59.45. And again, that's based on the average assessed value for the district. And a 1.5 mil increase would generate approximately $569,367 in additional revenue to the district.
Is the average assessment, it's in the high 30s, right, if I remember from?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Wait, what was that number again, 59?
It's right
59.45.
on the paper.
And just a note on our real estate tax collections, in our 1920 budget, I had to decrease the amount we were budgeting for delinquent tax collections. Because we were budgeting a number of 1.6 million, however, our collections have decreased. The delinquent tax collections have decreased, which is a good thing because our taxpayers are paying timely. We're turning less and less over to the delinquent tax collector to be collected. So our taxpayers are paying timely, we're sending less of them to collections. So it's a decrease in one revenue number, we are picking it up in the current real estate tax collection, and it just means that less of our taxpayers are dealing with collections and they're paying on a timely basis. Then I also just provided from 910 to 1819 the real estate tax history of local districts close to us. You will see we maintain relatively flat as well as Jim Thorpe. You'll see other districts such as Palmerton, Weatherly, they've had a standard set of increases over the past couple of years. On the next page, again, just based upon these local districts, you'll see the average percentage increase over those years for each of the districts, with Palmerton being the highest and the Titan being the lowest. So it just kind of gives you an idea of where we sit as far as the 18-19 rates go. I know a lot of districts are passing their budgets and a lot of them are passing it again with increases in them.
Does the homestead relief come automatically out of people's property taxes, or do they have to file?
They don't have to file a form. So what happens is they see on their tax bill, this is what your assessed value is. This is the amount of your assessed value that's excluded based upon the homestead farmstead calculation, and that exclusion gives you a decrease of that amount on your tax bill. So this budget is a challenge. However, every day we're actively looking at ways we can, save money. Can we realign if we have another resignation? Can we realign staff while maintaining, proper class size numbers, proper classes? So I will tell you that you will probably get an update on Tuesday that shows that this number is a little less. Because if we receive, a resignation, we're going to build that right into the budget, and we're going to send you an update. So it's an actively every hour working document where we're looking at, can we, decrease costs in one way? And again, there's factors that if they go in a positive direction, we can make this a much stronger budget. If we have mid-year retirements or changes, and there are portions of the collective bargaining agreements that we feel people may submit letters of resignation or retirement to retire by the end of the year. So then you're looking at maybe just a half year of salary versus a full year if they choose to retire as of December. So there are some positive factors that can go our way. What's in this budget is what we are expected to pay based upon our current staff and our current supplies, costs, and related.
So our fund balance, 2.6 million, could assist us with the budget next year, is that
Correct. Correct. And additionally, I'm hoping by Tuesday to be confident in a cash flow statement to show your revenues and expenditures are one point, your cash flow is another. You are waiting on some PlanCon reimbursements from prior years that we're working with PDE to get proper documentation in and hopefully move that forward during this 1920 year. That would be an influx of cash flow from revenue that would have been budgeted for in the prior year, that from a cash flow perspective will help us maintain the expenditures.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like we need more savings than we have. I mean, if we have 4.5 million in overage and 2.6 in the fund balance, $700,000 in, suggested savings you have here, and even if we raise taxes to the limit, that was the 600,000. It's getting close, but it's still not quite there.
Correct, and that just gets us through next year. That doesn't help us move forward. I mean, this is gonna be.
No, it zeroes out the fund balance, and then we don't have a solution for the year after.
Exactly, exactly, that's.
The solution, you don't have a solution, however, there will be additional reporting the board will receive that'll make it very clear. This is what we've spent in the 100 object, this is what we budgeted. So every month you're gonna see exactly where we're at. So you'll,
Are there expenditures that we've had in the past year that we will not have again?
I back those known expenditures that I can say we wouldn't have again, I back those out of the averages.
Like buying mower, for example.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, so those don't, we would carry those over in your adjusted budget?
No.
And then the other thing to keep in mind too, moving forward, is we may have a one-time influx, like we sell a building, that's a one-time revenue, which we don't have the fund, so we gotta keep that, that stuff in the back of our head too.
Are the buildings being advertised now?
Shaw David is being recommended to go out for the auction after the building now. So that when we do an offer, they've been advertised now for over.
No, they haven't. They haven't been advertised.
Okay. They've been posted in those areas to be advertised.
So if you go past Franklin, you can see it's for sale.
Says it on the sign.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yep, that is correct. As it does the Shaw David, it says it there too. Actually, it reads it, it says it doesn't cost.
Why aren't we advertising in other areas? More top areas where people are looking for this, buildings for business? Where aren't?
We've had many showings at Franklin, haven't we, Mr. Glader?
Yes.
And the problem with it is it needs too much work, correct?
That's some of the.
That's the general,
And in this budget meeting, I want to keep focused on that, but, like I said, Shaw David there is an offer there that the board can decide whether to, accept it or not accept for Shaw David. And then hopefully Franklin, there may be some interest in that. I've had 2 phone calls since, they reported Shaw David. The appraisals are on there, and I don't believe it's because they drove past Gail. I think it's because they were on movement, and one of them was a realtor. 2 of them actually were realtors that brought their clients to see the buildings, both buildings.
As far as this budget, I feel it's a more accurate presentation of where we'll actually spend. Going forward, when we look from 1920 to 2021, we're going to need to find a way to manage PSERS increases. PSERS has leveled out, so it's not the anticipated significant increases in PSERS over the past few years. You will have salary increases per what's bargained for in the collective bargaining agreements. And then naturally, no increases in supplies and things like that, and charter school tuition costs, special ed, things like that. But we're not starting from a point of where we thought we were spending 40 million, and we're actually ending at 43 million. We're budgeting what I feel we're actually gonna expend.
So not to state the obvious, I guess, you've mentioned, some areas that we're looking at, but we're looking at other outsourced services, whether it's IU versus other options.
We are, every time we have students in placement, we look at BHA now, of course, it's, more students go in there, so we compare the cost of BHA versus the cost of the IU or other programs. Also our cyber, some of our cyber options, there's other options that we're looking at as far as programs that we use our own, that'll be, a little bit of a cost savings.
It's going to be one of my other statements, if we can get an active program going with administration over the summer, where we're actively calling,
I have been involved in other districts that do an active push with not trying to pull people back, but try and give students still that virtual education, but give them the benefit of one, of getting a Lehigh Area School District diploma, also maybe helping them re-engage into some of the student activities, whether it be clubs or activities, or whether it be sports. Sometimes when they're in, a non-district cyber school, those non-district cyber schools don't really talk about the benefits of, they can still participate in interscholastic sports and activities. So sometimes when you have those discussions with parents, a lot of them don't know that we have our own virtual academy. So just being informational sometimes can help bring people back in.
And we are going to do a push to and have phone calls made, personal phone calls, letters we're going to be sending out. So we have a plan of, pushing that out as soon as, we get an approved budget to try and, get that additional, savings as part of it.
Every dollar is going to count at this point, pulling back in. So those active pushes over the summer are going to make a big difference.
And again, this budget will be presented at Thursday's special meeting for approval. So as soon as we receive changes, whether we receive resignations, and are able to realign things, we will be updating these numbers and getting them out to you so you can see the updates.
What you were going to send out for Julia, could you also, Patty, just send out where, of course, we're not finished yet, but where each account breakdown is for this school year?
Mm-hmm.
How you have it for the budgeted amount?
Yep.
Could you show the actuals for 18-19?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a 1.7 gap, a bump. So at least everyone can see where 1.7 comes from. Okay?
Any questions?
Thank you for the information and for keeping us informed.
Any other questions from the board for open discussion? Any questions, open discussion with public?
I guess I have one question if I could, JJ.
Yep.
I'm Jeff Lloyd from CCTI Business Administrator. Are you still planning on voting on our budget Monday?
Well, right now, currently, we voted no on your budget.
Okay.
Right.
Re-voting, I guess.
Well, that's part of it. I know we have a meeting tomorrow, CCTV.
Right.
which I'll be at. And I guess my question, answering a question with a question, has there been any budget meetings or discussions from the board at CCTI regarding the concerns that both Weatherly and Lehigh presented?
I don't believe there's any change from our current budget, to answer your question.
So there hasn't been any no board member meeting, no board meetings or anything up there to discuss?
No board meetings, no.
So there's been no attempt on CCTI's area to kind of make a effort to, realign or look at some different, options other than what they presented at our last meeting in March, I believe it was March.
Right.
Yeah.
Nothing, to be honest with you, nothing has changed. I mean, for a couple of reasons, you and I talked a little while back, nothing has changed. Mr. Reinbold might be here shortly if you want to speak with him. In fact, that's could you open the front door? I believe he's here. The door's locked. Yeah, could you open it up?
It might,
Yeah, it's locked. I believe he's here.
That was the last one I watched.
I lost my train of thought.
Your tuition hasn't changed.
Yeah, I mean,
Very long time.
again, I could go over a summary of our budget, just so the board members understand what it is again. From when we released our budget, again, there's a 50,000 piece for capital. We're eliminating that, so each district will benefit a little bit by that. Our overall budget to the 5 sending district has not increased in the past 6 years. That would be like a 0 mil increase for 6 years. Our plan has been, over the last 3 to 5 years, we have been Mr. Reinbold and I, our administration, have been telling our board, we will not increase our budget to the 5 participating districts until we start incurring deficits, until we start using some of our fund balance. We are not planning on increasing. Based on that, I think we told your board the last time we were here, we are not planning on increasing our budget to the 5 participating districts for at least 2 more years. We don't want to guarantee more than that, but you could budget the next 2 years of no increase from CCTI and no budget in the capital of that 50,000 for the foreseeable future.
Now, to be clear, Joy, so no increase to the tuition rate, so the number of students attending CCTI has gone up, so there's been contribution. Their budget year to year continues to grow, but that amount has been covered by year-to-year tuition.
Right, and the cost per student has actually been dropping, correct?
I just wanted to make sure we had a full picture.
Yeah, I understand. We just buy a per student cost, right? We're not paying a lump sum for a varying number of students.
Yes.
I think everyone's been very happy with CCTI, the community, people rave about the service that they provide. They have kept the tuition the same. To me, it seems reasonable to approve the budget. I think, chasing after them for dollars, I don't know, it doesn't make sense to me.
If it's being used more,
On the agenda for Monday night. So
the kids
the
don't
discussion
have
should be made Monday night.
problems.
It's on the agenda, so the discussion should occur Monday night, not during this meeting. Just to be clear.
Oh, that was my question, Mr. President. Is it on your agenda?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I know. But if you have questions, I guess you could ask now, you could ask.
No,
until
I was
Monday,
going to ask,
or you could ask Monday.
tomorrow at the meeting, so there's been no discussion
That's fine.
regarding, in the days here, so there's been no discussion with the board, no discussion of any adjustments made, you just have the budget presented, and it's still the same, even after, 2 districts, having some questions, so no adjustments have been made other than the capital adjustment, right?
That's correct.
Anything else?
No questions?
Thank you very much, and the meeting adjourned at committee meeting, adjourned at 7:10.
Thank you.